All right, it is 9 o'clock, and I understand we've got Commissioner Harris, Commissioner Jones. I don't know if Commissioner Tester is online yet or not. So we've got three commissioners. We've got a quorum, and if you would, I'll open our meeting with a prayer. If everyone would bow their heads. Dear God, thank you for your presence with us. The fears we're facing now seem insurmountable. Sometimes we don't know what to do. Please help us come back to you. Bring us safely under the shelter of your wings. Thank you that you alone are our fortress, our protection, and our rest for today and the days ahead. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Let's see. The next item is determination of the essential functions of government and approval of the agenda, and the meeting will be conducted electronically. Let's see. The next item is determination participating electronically in accordance with the governor's executive order number 16 regarding the limiting gatherings to prevent further spread of COVID-19. And we would need a motion and a second to approve that and the agenda. Do we have a motion regarding the limiting gatherings?
I'll move that the meeting is essential business. Do we need to do them separately?
I think we can do them at one time. I don't know. Attorney Allison, can we do it one at a time? Or?
We've done it both ways, and so I think that just so long as your discussion is clear, if you want to walk through what you've got on the agenda, it's up to you, Chairman.
Let's do them all at one time.
We've done it both ways, and so I think that just
is that all right with you, Commissioner Jones?
Sure. So I'll move that the meeting is going to cover essential business and that we approve the agenda for today.
All right. Do we have a second to that, Commissioner Harris?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you so much. We will, I guess, do a roll call vote. I guess we'll kind of handle it that way since we don't have any other way to do it. But on the motion and the second, I guess all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Anybody have any objections to doing our voting that way by voice vote? And attorney, does that cause us any problems?
Yes.
You're muted.
Allison, you're muted.
You're muted, Allison.
I beg your pardon. I thought I had tapped it enough to unmute it. Yes, the executive order will require a roll call vote.
All right.
Votes and reflect the record, but
if you would, please. Allison, if you would do the roll call, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Very good. Commissioner Jones, this is on your motion to consider.
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Carragher?
Yes.
Are there any other commissioners present who have joined us? Okay, hearing none further, we have 3 yes, and that's the quorum for that. Thank you.
All right, we need to have a review and approval of our April 2nd minutes. Do we have a motion to that effect?
I will move to approve.
All right. Do we have a second to that effect?
Second.
Thank you, Kent. Any other discussion? Roll call vote, Allison, if you would.
I'm happy to. Commissioner Jones?
Yes.
Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
And Commissioner Carragher?
Yes.
And on approval of the minutes, that is 3 yes, and that is the quorum voting.
Next item of business is discussion of our Board of Equalization. We've got 3 appointments to make, and I believe we happen to have 3 applications on hand. And at this time, the chair will open it up for discussion and comments that anybody has.
Just for my own edification, does anyone know how many people are on the Board of Equalization?
Mayor, do you know?
Hold on for a second. Are you there?
Yeah, we're still here.
Okay. I believe it's 5, but I'll double check that for you.
I think you're right. I've appeared before that august body once and was turned down like a thud. And I think it is by.
Yeah, they're tough. They're a tough group.
Oh, they are. I thought all of them were my friends until I got before them, and then they just, whoo, no mercy.
I actually have a neighbor and friend who was recently very frustrated and upset by his property tax increase and went to that board and had very positive things to say. So whoever's on it now, and I'm not familiar with the members, are doing a great job. It did seem like one of the applications is somebody who's re-upping. I think it might have been Ms. Light. Is that correct? Anybody know?
Marion Light,
Mhm.
Mr. Light.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marion was
Yeah.
on there before. Yeah, he's been on there.
Okay.
He's well experienced. Any Commissioner Harris, you got any comments or thoughts?
I guess we had 3 openings and we only had 3 applications.
Yes, sir. That's it.
Said?
5
I would
is
say
actually,
yes.
excuse me.
Go ahead, Kent. Finish your thought.
I would say that. Was I talking over somebody? I'm sorry if I was.
No, you go right ahead. You have the floor.
Okay. I would just say that, I appreciate that we're, and I know you're on the rules committee, the way we're doing these things. I would maybe just give a little, maybe suggestions that I would have. I know we put on our website what, that we're taking applications. But I think it would be nice on there if we could list in advance on our website what boards are coming up and give some type of a notice that, this particular committee is going to be having an opening, and just to let people know a little more about what's going on. I know that's sort of still in its infancy we're working on, but I think that would be a way that maybe we could garner more attention to people instead of just sort of like we have now, just generically saying, apply for a board and not having any specifics on there. But having said that, if you want a motion, I'll make a motion that we approve 3 people. That's 3 applied. Let's approve them and go on.
All right, there's a motion. Commissioner Harris.
I'll second.
Second, Commissioner Jones. And Susan, I believe we've got the ability to follow up on Commissioner Harris's suggestion, don't we?
We do.
Okay. Well, I hope we will. I think that's a good suggestion. Any other comments or questions? All right, ready? Eddie?
Mr. Chairman, there are 5 members on that board.
All right.
Just verified.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's go with a roll call vote again.
I'll take that. It's Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Yes.
and Commissioner Carragher.
Yes. Okay, our jumping ahead of you, Allison, but I hope you don't mind.
You've got the 3 votes in favor. It'll be moved forward to the full
All right,
commission.
thank you. Next is a discussion of TIF funding. This was to have been brought before our committee back on February the 11th, and it was withdrawn. And I'm not sure, Joe, are you going to present this, or Mitch, or who's going to be the spokesperson for this?
It's my understanding that Commissioner Malone was going to be on board to talk about it.
All right. Freddie, are you on board?
I am here this morning. Good morning.
Great to have you. If you would mind handling this discussion and action for us, I appreciate it.
I will do my best. But good morning. I hope everybody is well.
Live and kicking.
I am here this morning, I guess, to speak regarding this item. And just as a reminder, I do serve as the county's representative on the Johnson City Development Authority Board. And so that's how I am here this morning, is as a Washington County Commissioner that represents the commission and the county on the JCDA board. If you recall, this item actually came before It came through the committee process, and then came to the commission. I think February of last year, February of 2019. So it's been over a year. And I think ultimately these proposed amendments actually began much earlier than that, well before, I think well before some of us were even serving on the commission or on the JCDA board. But what is at hand, what the request is amendments to the existing redevelopment plan that exists. It's really, there's three parties to the agreement. There is the Washington County, Johnson City Development Authority, and the City of Johnson City. Back many years ago, the redevelopment plan was put in place for the downtown district, to redevelop that district. And then over the years, there have been a variety of there have been a few amendments, but then there's also been a number of resolutions that have gone through the county that have, I guess, tweaked or made changes. But the proposed amendments that again, we had considered over a year ago and is before you again this morning, really no difference. And these proposed amendments have already been approved by both the City of Johnson City and the Johnson City Development Authority. But since there are three parties to this agreement, it also requires the approval of the Washington County Commission. The two changes to the redevelopment agreement, or the two proposed changes, are one, a method of the method by which the calculation is made as to how much of the increased or how the tax increment payment is calculated. And our Director of Finance, Mitch Meredith, he has prepared a worksheet that we may have available for you this morning. If not, we can get it to you. Certainly Budget has seen it. But it changes the method in which that TIF payment to the JCDA is calculated. And actually, the way the redevelopment agreement stands right now, it is disadvantageous to the county the way that calculation occurs. And I can't get into the specifics. If we need to, I'm sure Director Meredith could do so. But in basic terms, there is a difference between the calculation. Oh, I see it on the screen now. There is a difference between the calculation of the assessed versus collected, and that's going to be my simplification. But really, that's why I'm here this morning, is in a sense also representing the Budget Committee, because had we not pulled it Monday night, there was a proposed budget amendment there where we would have, and I know this was sent out earlier, but we were to approve a budget amendment to allocate an additional $80,592 to cover the full payment based on the current calculation to the JCDA. In conversation at the JCDA level, I think acknowledging that these amendments should have occurred some time ago, they're willing to forego that added payment the current fiscal year, $80,592. Based on conversation, they are willing to forego that if we go ahead and move forward and approve these amendments. So that's what, from my perspective, that is what is driving this at the moment, because it will have an $80,592 impact on our current fiscal year. Then additionally, next year and the years to come, and certainly we're in the budget season now for next year, it will have a similar, actually increasing impact each year on our budget. And if you think about roughly the 10 years that are remaining on the term of our agreement, somewhere around $90,000 to $100,000 a year over 10 years, starting to talk about some significant dollars. So one of the two amendments is to the calculation, and obviously that is advantageous to the county. The second amendment deals with the debt ceiling. When this redevelopment plan, actually, I don't think it was in the original agreement, it was subsequent perhaps, but a debt limitation was put on the amount of debt financing that could be attained from lenders for these projects. And so that debt limitation is out there, and it would change that debt limit. A debt limit would still increase, but instead of being a fixed set dollar amount, it would be based as a percentage of the overall value of the properties in the district. And again, Director Meredith could probably speak more eloquently to that. But those are the proposed two amendments. Now, you might argue, okay, the calculation thing, that's good for the county. The debt limit amendment is not. But really, the debt limit, from my perspective, is irrelevant for a couple reasons. And we're not really giving anything away there. There's still a limit. It is obviously a higher limit. It's tied as to a percentage of the value, but it's irrelevant for a couple reasons. One, the county still has approval authority over every single project in excess of $25,000. And so you say, well, you could go out and they could borrow all this debt that's supported by the TIF financing. Well, yes, but every one of those projects, before it closes, every one of those projects has to come to the county for approval. Every one over 25,000. Secondly, the county's not obligated on any of this debt in any way. Now, we have committed the TIF funds to service that debt, but only over a defined period of time. And the dollar amount of how much the county contributes to the JCDA to service these TIF projects, the dollar amount does not change based on how much debt is outstanding. And in theory, a lender is only going to lend enough money that can be serviced by the amount of cash flow available to service that debt, i.e. how much is flowing into the TIF funding from the county and the city. And so in my mind, the second amendment relative to the debt limit is really non-consequential to the county. We're not obligated on the debt, and we're only obligated to the funding that we're committed to, of which the calculation will change with these proposed amendments. These amendments came about trying to bring the redevelopment agreement into some uniformity with the state act that occurred in 2012. Actually, Johnson City and Washington County was on the cutting edge of the TIF being used on a district basis. TIF obviously existed before the redevelopment plan, but I don't think it had ever been applied on a district-wide basis. So we were one of the first to ever do this. And, you know, some of the things over time that we've learned, it got improved in that act by the state in 2012. And so the primary purpose of these amendments is to help bring some uniformity and agreement with that 2012 legislation. So with that, I'll shut up and listen and see if there's any questions.
All right, we'll see if Mitch, do you want to give any comments?
Well, Chairman, I think Commissioner Malone covered it very well. To boil it down into, I guess the pertinent points, the method of calculating the contribution to the JCDA that Washington County has used for many years is based on an assessed value. And without going into all the math that's involved there, that does in fact us to pay to remit a greater amount to the JCDA than if the calculation was based on strictly the amount of tax collected. And if you look at the chart on the screen, the base year tax collected was a little over $1,397,000. That's what we are not under the new agreement. That's what we're comparing to. So as our taxes go up, the district gets those additional taxes. They also get it if the assessment goes up because it drives that bracket on the assessment. Essentially in Tennessee, you don't get any additional revenue on inflation or just the growth of the assessment. That's what the reappraisal did for us. As the properties were revalued higher, the tax rate had to come down. Well, that didn't mitigate the amount that we were paying to the TIF district because of the math and the way this thing worked. Had it been based on the actual taxes collected, we would have paid, and actually, as Commissioner Malone was referencing $80,000, actually we would have a $95,000 savings. He was comparing the amount that we needed to make a budget.
Correct. Yeah.
What we would end up doing is paying the JCDA an amount less than what we budgeted for the current year by another $10,000 or $15,000. So that's a huge benefit, I believe, to the county, and I'm very thankful that the JCDA is still willing to consider doing that. The other issue I think that he touched on has to do with the debt limit. And again, he touched on that. The county, if you go back to Resolution 161114 that the commission passed in November of 2016, it states the TIF district comes to an end at December 31st, 2029. Unless, and if the JCDA were to choose to borrow money on a project, maturity extended past that date, they would have to have the commission's approval of that borrowing in order for them to be able to receive any funding after December 31st, 2029. All funding to the JCDA stops on January 1. So the commission has, and it's actually a project by project basis, has the ability to prevent an extension, if you will, of JCDA funding after December 31st, 2029. Given that, it really doesn't matter what the debt limit is. If the JCDA jumps out there and borrows more than they can amortize over that period, or more money than what's going to come in from the county contribution, they'll do that or the lenders that loan them the money will do that at their peril. There's no commitment or obligation for the county to fund anything after January 1 of 2030. Okay, so that's probably enough. Any questions, I'll be more than glad to try to address them.
All right. Mayor, you got any comments before we open it up for discussion?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I believe it's been covered thoroughly.
All right. We'll open it up for discussion. Commissioner Jones or Commissioner Harris? No questions?
I'll just say, Freddie, you're a rock star. That was fantastic description of all the considerations. You did a great job. It's not,
well, you're kind. Thank you.
Not uncomplicated. And my only comment is just that, we can see from the numbers that the TIF program has had a positive impact on growth, and I appreciate that. I think you all know that I also feel like these kinds of programs require a lot of good monitoring and watchfulness by all of us. And I think we've tried to put some processes in place for doing that. We're supposed to get a report in July. That's kind of our schedule for getting a regular report from the JCDA on the TIF program. And I think that type of monitoring will be really important in thinking about how TIF goes forward. But this particular couple of revisions, I think are pretty easy to, they don't play into that for me. They feel very reasonable. So anyway, that's my little prologue. I'll make a motion that we accept, that we move that resolution forward. I guess it goes to budget with the 2 amendments.
Does it go to budget next, or has it already been to budget?
I think working through the committee process again, it would go to budget again next week and then on to the full commission if approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Harris, any comments or questions?
Well, I did. I had a question there, but this, I heard somebody, I think it was Commissioner Malone, that said that the debt on this doesn't affect the taxpayers of Washington County. I guess my question would be, what would pay back the debt then? I was under the impression that it was the property taxes that was collected that paid the debt.
Ken, I don't think this is a general obligation of the county, is it, Freddie?
No, it's not really. The only obligation that the county has, and the county has no direct obligation on the debt itself. The county's obligation is to fund to provide the TIF funding through the date that Director Meredith referenced, and
my
that's
question
it.
is, does the tax dollars collected, Washington County tax dollars collected in that district, go to pay the debt?
Correct, it does.
Well, how could you say then that it doesn't affect the taxpayers?
Well, the lenders
That's
are
tax
not
money
going to
that we would
lend.
collect.
The lenders are not going to lend more than that debt would service, and so whether they have $1 worth of debt or $100 million worth of debt, the only money that is going to go from the county to service that debt is the TIF funding that we're going to fund regardless of how much debt they have. So if, I think to Director Meredith's point, if lenders are out there that would loan more than that source of cash flow will service, then they're doing so at their own peril.
Okay, let me ask one more question. I know the last time that we voted on this, of course, it didn't pass the full commission. And at that point, I felt like it was the JCDA, when they came forward, were sort of dangling over our head. Either you approve both or nothing. Either we'll do this new calculation where the county will collect more or pay us less in taxes because of the increase in values and the tax increase in the TIF area, or we won't pay you that if you don't increase the amount that we can borrow. Is that still the case, or are we looking now at two separate resolutions where we could approve the fact that, yes, we should do the recalculations, or is it still the dangling over our head saying it's either both or nothing?
Well, these amendments were proposed together. They have already been approved by the JCDA and the city. So what we have before us today are these two amendments together. Relative to the debt piece, I don't understand there being an issue there, because again, the county's not obligated on the debt. The amount we pay into the JCDA does not differ or change based on the debt level.
Freddie,
So they're still tied together then. That was my question.
Commissioner Malone, I would submit that the amount of debt that the JCDA has in the contribution the county makes to the JCDA are not connected. It doesn't matter. We're going to pay the JCDA $500,000 a year through 2029, whether they have $1 of debt or $100 million worth of debt.
Yeah, I think that's what I said, that we're going to pay into the JCDA this amount of money regardless of the debt piece.
Well, what happens in 2029 then? It's like Mitch said, if you have $100 million in debt, who's going to pay it?
There would
without the TIF funding. I mean, I'm sure at that point it would be, well, we want more years. I mean, it's just a continuation that I would see. Who else could pay it?
Well, the lenders are generally, I can't speak for all lenders, but the lenders, and Commissioner Carragher can chime in on this as well. The lenders are generally smart enough to know how their loan is going to be repaid, and loans get repaid from cash flow. And so the only way I ever see a lender loaning more than what the funding is if the county commission approved a scenario where that would happen. And so that's where it would come back to the county commission for approval to either extend that date or to fund more money. But
Ken,
that would require an additional approval.
Ken, I tell you how it works in the banking business. When the bank examiners come in and they see you've got a loan that can't be serviced, they make you write it down to the portion that can be serviced. So I guarantee any banker that makes this loan is going to have it in there where the thing's paid off before the JCDA runs out of money. And the other comment I would make, and we had these figures last year when we looked at this, the JCDA has really increased property values in the area that it's located. I don't remember what the numbers were, but it was a fairly significant number. So it's not a zero-sum game to where the county kicks in money and we get no value back. We do get value when the properties are improved and their value goes up on the tax roll, and eventually we get full property taxes on it.
I guess one more question I have.
Yes,
since
sir.
Freddie serves on the JCDA board. I'd read an article, I guess, in the Johnson City Press maybe a week or so back that they were talking about the John Sevier again, and I guess coming back to the county to see if they could try this. And I think Commissioner from Johnson City, Joe Wise, had made some type of a comment about maybe don't go back yet or something. Is this part of that to help fund or look at funding that project? Is that the motive behind this particular change?
No, I think the motive relative to these amendments dates back literally a couple years ago, trying to bring some uniformity to the state legislation from 2012. So this proposal today has nothing to do with the John Sevier. Is there some chance that out into the future, the JCDA would come back to the commission with something relative to the John Sevier? Maybe so, but that's entirely separate from this issue.
Do we have any other comments or questions? All good questions. Freddie, I think I concur. You did a great job on the presentation.
Oh, well, thank you.
I think we have a motion from Commissioner Jones. I'll do the second on this. And any other questions or comments before we do a roll call vote? All right, hearing none. Allison, if you'll do a roll call vote for us, please.
I'm happy to, and I'm going to start with you, Commissioner Harris, since the motion was made by Commissioner Jones. Harris?
No.
Jones? Excuse me.
Yes.
Carragher?
Yes.
Is there any other commissioner who's joined the meeting since it started? Do we have another commissioner present? Hearing none, the vote is 2 yes, 1 no, and therefore it will not go forward to budget this month. Is that how it should be noted? Is there any reconsideration or further discussion? This was a motion to accept the amendments and move the resolution forward to budget.
I forgot what the county regimen says, but I think there's several months have to pass before this thing can be brought up for reconsideration, and I'm not sure what length of time that is.
And I don't have it in front of me because of the screen, but I can say that I don't recall a time limit in a motion to reconsider specific in our rules, and I was just looking for this discussion, given the time-sensitive nature that it was brought to you with respect to a proposed budget amendment for this fiscal year, if there was any further discussion or reconsideration while it was on the table with this committee.
Yeah, just an observation. This will cost us $80,592 unbudgeted this year. And closer to 96,000 or so next.
I'll say this, Chairman, if I can.
Yes, sir. You go right ahead.
I don't have a problem at all with voting to change the way that this calculation is done. I think it should be. I just don't like. I just can't vote for the increase in this debt limit, and I don't like the fact that both these are put in the same resolution. I feel like that's just something that they're dangling over our head to say either you vote for this or we're not going to give you the money, and you're going to have to increase the debt. I mean, that's not the way you do business. It's almost. I don't like that. I don't like the way it's done. I think it should be two separate resolutions. And I would vote in favor of course, changing the way the money's calculated, but I'm not going to vote to increase the debt ceiling.
I thought I heard Mr. Meredith say that he thought the debt limit was kind of a moot issue. We don't even need to consider that really what was before us today was the method of calculations.
Chairman Carragher, correct, but from a dollars and cents standpoint, I think this thing is worthy of further consideration by the Budget Committee and the full Commission. So I submit that if you wanted to see those two issues separated, possibly the Budget Committee can discuss that, and by the time the resolution gets to the Commission floor, it is two different components. Personally, I don't think either one makes any difference, but certainly, I do think you need to keep this thing moving forward.
Well, I think we need to save the taxpayers some money, and if we're talking about $85,000, I'd really like to see this move forward.
Could I ask another question?
Yes, sir. You go right ahead.
Well, this would be to you or to the county attorney, but could I make a motion that we approve the change in the calculation?
Sure.
Yes, sir, Commissioner.
Not the debt ceiling. I mean, okay.
We voted. The county, your committee has voted on, the issue presented, which was the amendment proposed. If you, as a commissioner looking at this issue, would like to put forward a motion that maybe it could be however you'd like to word it, but what I've heard you say is you'd like to look at changing that methodology and get more information on other issues, you could certainly present that so that it could go forward to budget and get you the answers that you wanted. You can make any motion you'd like to examine this issue.
Well, motion would, I would have no problem making a motion that we accept the change in the calculations, but not to increase any debt limit. That would be I would vote for that, but I think that just makes common sense. I'm for that all the way. I just don't like I've said a couple times, I don't want to keep saying it over and over, but I don't like the fact they're both tied together. I think that's too much of saying you do this. It's sort of like if you don't do it, you're going to look bad because you didn't vote to take the money, but you're going to have to give us what we want to. And I don't like that.
And just for sake of good order, Commissioner Harris, with respect to your motion, if it was to accept the change in the calculation of the increment, that would be something that has not been approved individually by Johnson City and the JCDA. Is that correct, Commissioner Malone? You would hear that separately as well. That would probably need to go back to them. It wouldn't be automatic per se, but you'd be opening up that dialogue.
Well, I think it is correct to say that this is a tri-party agreement, and so solely because the commission were to perhaps pass a resolution that says we'd like to change the way this is calculated, that doesn't mean that the manner in which the calculation occurs changes, since it is a tri-party agreement, and so. So I would argue that it's not an automatic, but now you're the legal scholar, not I.
And my question may have been a little inartful. I guess what I was also making sure was for clarity that Commissioner Malone, as the representative of the county commission and making this information to the committee, doesn't have the authority to bind the other two parties. And that was really what I was trying to make sure that everyone understood, because then the county has the opportunity to look at these issues, which is what I'm hearing the Director of Accounts and Budgets request with respect to the impact on the budgets this year and next. So that, I think that's clear then. And so it would be a motion to accept the changes in the calculation of the increment and the TIF.
Let me put my 2 cents too on the lending limit. I think that's really kind of a moot point, because probably anything that the JCDA wants to borrow is going to come to the county for approval anyway. So I don't know that portion of what we discussed is as important to me as changing the methodology of calculating the TIF contribution. I think that's the most important thing. And with that, I'll second Commissioner Harris's motion. Commissioner Jones, do you have any comments?
I would just comment that I'll support this motion. I certainly want to see the county come into the current state rules and do calculations appropriately. Disappointed that we can't support the city in its continued use of the TIF mechanism. And of course, it sounds like it's got to go back through some hoops now. So I guess we don't really know if we're going to get what we're asking for here. We're just going to ask for it. Is that?
It's got to go to the full commission. So when we meet on May 27th, I would think that this would be, if it goes through budget, would be on our agenda to look at it at the May 27th commission meeting.
Well, it'll be May 18th, but just because we're asking the city / JCDA for sort of half the deal that they have already passed doesn't mean that they would agree to doing that, because
let me ask a point of clarification.
They've asked us to agree to is the full packet, the full reformulation, including the debt ceiling change. So we may just end up having to pay this money this year by trying to kind of scrap over kind of these two pieces, basically.
Well, help me with my calendar. I've got our county meeting on May 27th. Is it on
That's
the 18th?
Memorial Day.
No, Memorial Day is the 25th.
Oh, well, am I wrong? Didn't we back?
Allison or the mayor or Mitch, when is our county meeting? I thought it was I have it on my calendar as the 27th.
Looking, Commissioner.
I believe it's the 18th. That's why
18th?
our committee is being held the 30th of April.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. I will change my calendar. I'm glad it came up.
Glad we got that straight.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been there.
So am I right though that, like, sure, we can have a bunch of committees and our whole county commission agree, like we don't want this whole deal, we just want the calculation to favor the county, but that's something, this whole thing, the TIF district and how it functions to drive economic development in our county is a collaboration with the JCDA and the city. And it's a 3-party agreement, like you all said. And so they don't have to agree to just doing one part of the agreement. And we may not get anything, right?
That is correct.
So the three of us can vote on this today and, wait a couple of weeks and then find out that we basically just need to pay the city or the JCDA $80,000 and get nowhere, basically.
Well, my desire is to see this thing move forward, and hopefully it will get to the full commission, and hopefully we can have a lively and spirited debate on this.
Well, but to your point, Commissioner Carragher, it's only the one portion of.
Yes, and Commissioner Malone, I may be wrong, but again, from my perspective, I think the debt limit question is just kind of a moot question, because everything's got to come back to the county for approval if they borrow anything over 25,000, we control the debt limit every time we vote on a project.
Oh,
Right,
we
but
are.
that portion, that piece of the agreement is removed under Commissioner Harris's motion. So now we're just making a motion to have the it's like having our cake and eating it too. The debt ceiling stays in place, but the calculation is done to favor the county. And I just don't know if the other two parties that we work with on the TIF project will agree to that. And we'll end up walking away from this with losing the 80,000 for this year and in years to come, which we now see we've lost over $1 million doing this. And, we hamstring the JCDA. So I don't know.
Well,
All right. Are we ready to vote? All right,
Commissioner-
Allison, go ahead.
Director of Budgets has a document on the screen.
commissioners and commissioners of the CIA committee, I referenced this resolution earlier, 1611-14. But if you look at this section that's just highlighted here, unless the commission approves any specific loan that extends past December 31st of 2029, we have no obligation for it. So the debt limit doesn't matter. What matters is those projects that the commission approves as they come forward, and that's where the rubber will hit the road. So, I think you need to do this both. Give up the debt limit. It doesn't matter if it's going to save you $80,000 to $100,000 a year. Give it up.
Yeah,
that extra dollars.
I concur. Any other comments or questions?
I absolutely need clarification then on what we're voting on. Commissioner Harris, can you restate the motion, please?
Well, my motion is that we pass a resolution to accept the change of calculation that's been presented to us by TIF and JCDA, the change of calculation and the way the taxes are figured in that TIF district.
And I've seconded that. Any other comments or questions? And this would go.
Could I say one more?
Go right ahead.
Okay. I hear a lot of talk, and I'm not trying to be the negative one here, but if in fact this doesn't matter, that we change a debt ceiling, then why are they so interested in changing it and tying it to this calculation figure? I mean, we've heard that JCDA and Johnson City, this is what they have to have. Well, we represent everybody in the whole county, and I would just say that we should have some input in this as well. And I'm not a banker, but I realize if all of a sudden my credit card limits tripled or doubled, it's a whole lot easier to go out and buy more stuff. And it would take a lot to ever get me to vote to change this debt limit. So that's just my 2 cents.
Well, I'm just expressing an opinion. And Freddie, any comments you have?
Well, just to use Commissioner Harris's analogy, though, I guess you're right. You just doubled or tripled the credit card limit, but you have to come back to the county commission every single time you spend more than a quarter. And so your credit card isn't much good unless you come to the parent, the Washington County Commission, to get approval to do the additional project. And so
I think when this was put in place, we had, the commission set a limit for a purpose, a limit of money back then for a reason. And they also set a time frame. But I think we should stick to those. But I appreciate you coming in, Commissioner Malone.
All right. Do we have any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Allison?
Yes, sir. So in front of you is a motion to accept a change in the calculation of the methodology, a change in the methodology calculating the TIF It was Commissioner Harris's motion, seconded by Commissioner Carragher. So calling for a vote then. We'll start with you, Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Carragher,
Yes.
and Commissioner Harris.
Yes.
This will then be brought forward to the Budget Committee for consideration. And when is that Budget Committee meeting? I know y'all are meeting every week. So when would this be so that these commissioners can follow it?
Wednesday morning, 9 o'clock.
Which Wednesday?
Next Wednesday.
The
May the
next
6th.
Wednesday.
The 6th?
Yes.
May 6th. Very good. Okay, so commissioners, if you would like to note that, that'll be May 6th. Thank you. You've got a lot on your plate. I want to be sure I'm not mixing up your agendas, Mitch and Mayor.
It'll be a busy day.
All right, do we have anything else to come before the CIA committee this morning? Do we have a motion to adjourn? I'll make the
So
motion
moved.
to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, last roll call vote. Commissioner Jones,
Yes.
Commissioner Harris,
Gary? Yes.
and Commissioner Carragher.
Yes.
Yes.
I think it's, we announce the tally. I believe it's 3-0.
Rio, and you are able to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. I appreciate everybody sharing their time with us, and I hope y'all have a great day. Thank you.